So hi everyone, my name is Leanne. You can just call me Leanne. And today we're going to talk about COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on children. So here a little bit introduction of myself. So I'm from Taiwan, and the picture on the left you see here is actually a photo of me and my husband when we graduated from POMS back in 2012. So I was in the 4MD program as well. And after graduating, we moved to the United States. I did my pediatric residency in Cleveland, Ohio. I was at Metro Health Medical System. And after that, we moved to Oregon, where I am right now, to be, I'm practicing as an outpatient general pediatrician since 2017. And the picture on the right, you can see is actually in the family, our family. So now we have two kids, my daughter, Katie, she's 8 years old, and my son, Lyle, he's 5 years old. And I started talking about pandemic last year, because it was pretty bad here in the United States. So I actually sent the kids and my husband, they went back to Taiwan for 10 months, where it was much better, the pandemic over there. And then when I was here alone, I started talking about, joining some different social media, Clubhouse, and start talking about pandemic and in pediatric population. So here I am. Today, we're gonna just briefly go over first the pediatric data in the United States and some quick points of the presentations in children. We're gonna talk a little bit about MISC and then the impact on children of the pandemic, mentally and physically. And later at the end, we'll talk about the vaccinations and what the pandemic has changed the way of medicine, practicing medicine, especially in pediatrics, and what the future might be like from years from now. Okay. So this is just a quick overview of the current data, and I actually use mainly the data in the United States, and this is all from the American Academy of Pediatrics. They publish every week about the current cases in the United States. So as of February 10th, there's been more than 12 million pediatric cases accumulated, since the pandemic started, in kids from 0 to 18 years of age. The hospitalization rate, though, is much, much, much lower compared to adults. So kids that are diagnosed with COVID actually don't have that high of hospitalization rate. It's only between 0.1 to 1.5%. So that's a good news. And the even better news is the mortality rate, the death rate in pediatrics. So somehow kids do much better compared to adults when they are diagnosed with COVID. So the death rate is between 0 to 0.01%. So that's really, really low compared to adult population, especially the people over 65 years of age. So currently, the percent of cumulative pediatric cases in the United States is about 18.9 of all cases. And overall, the rate is 16,000 per 100,000 children. But if you look at the last several weeks in the United States, so this is the figure that you can see that there was a surge about January this year. So after Christmas break, after New Year's, the case surged in pediatrics. So this graph is only for children on the picture here, and you see that recently the last 2-3 weeks it's been coming down a little bit. So just last week there's about 298,000 cases in a week, but when it was peaked in January, there's been more than almost 1 million in 1 week for kids younger than 18 years of age diagnosed with COVID. And then here you see that compared to adults, kids can account for 21% of the patients last week, so in a week. So it's pretty steady, but if you look at the first week of the pandemic, the kids only kind of account for 2.6%, but recently it's been getting higher. But now it seems like it's slowing down again after several weeks after we have the Omicron variant here in the States. So those were some numbers of the current data. And then we're gonna talk about the presentations in kids how they present when they have COVID. So kind of unlike adults, or actually I should say at the beginning of the pandemic, we thought, okay, this is a respiratory virus. So you usually have cough, fever, those symptoms but in kids, it really varies. So you could have systemic symptoms, including fever, headaches, body aches, or fatigue and chills. Then you can also have the respiratory symptoms. So several weeks ago, I saw a patient and she presented with just, kind of stridors, croupy cough. She's 8 years old. So I thought, okay, this might just be another, common like parainfluenza virus, right, which is common to cause croups. And it turned out that she also has COVID. She had COVID as well. So this virus really is kind of tricky in pediatric patients. It can cause different kind of presentations. Some of them may have wheezing, and some of them have only the upper respiratory. Some may have pneumonia involving the lower respiratory systems. And then the GI symptoms also vary. It could be nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. And I had some patients that only had diarrhea as their symptoms. They did not have respiratory symptoms at all, no cough. And a lot of them didn't have any fever. And we know that now with Omicron, it tends to be a milder disease. So with Omicron, it even looks more like just a common cold. So it's been more difficult to diagnose. So you can see the 3 photos here, which I got from the Academy of Dermatology. So COVID toes, this kind of rash was kind of found after the pandemic. And you see on the 3rd photo on the very right here, it's kind of a purple. You see erythematous toe, swollen toes, and then with a little bit purple center that looks kind of like a blister. That's why we call COVID toes, but it can also be on the fingers as well. But when people first found it, it mainly happened on the toes. So these are kind of a different rash presentation you can see with COVID. But the left 2 photos here, urticaria or hives, we know that not just COVID virus, some other viruses can also cause these kind of, viral urticaria, viral rash as well. So some kids just come in with different rashes and then turn out to be having COVID. So bottom line is the COVID virus is really tricky. And in kids, it can have different presentations, and a lot of them have no symptoms at all. So the hospitalization, so like I mentioned earlier, the rate of hospitalization in kids are a lot lower compared to adults. And we know that in older people, in adults, those that are hospitalized, most of them have some kind of underlying conditions, right? Like chronic disease, diabetes, hypertension, or some other issues. But in children, you see here, the very right, more than 40% of the children that were hospitalized for COVID did not have any underlying condition. So that's kind of a bummer that really you don't know which kid after COVID will be hospitalized. And a lot of them are actually, they were healthy kids without any history of asthma, no history of other stuff, but then they have to be hospitalized. And then those that do have underlying conditions, obesity is still the most common reason, just like in adults. We know that people that are obese have higher risk of getting severe COVID, and same in children. So with those patients, those pediatric patients that have underlying diseases, obesity is the most common one. And you see also the very left, asthma. So some respiratory issue also will put them at risk of being hospitalized. But remember though, a lot of kids do not have underlying condition, but still end up being at the hospital for COVID.